I know this might be one of the hardest things you'll hear after a painful breakup. What if the person you're calling a narcissist isn't one? Read that again. Because sometimes the label that's supposed to bring you peace ends up keeping you trapped in the very pain you're trying to escape. That doesn't mean narcissists don't exist. They absolutely do. And real narcissistic abuse leaves deep psychological wounds. But not every cold goodbye, every broken promise, or every selfish decision is evidence of narcissistic personality disorder. Sometimes the truth is more painful. And that's exactly why so many people struggle to accept it. When a relationship ends, it doesn't just break your heart. It shatters the future you imagined. The plans. The routines. The version of life you thought you were building together. Suddenly you're left standing in the middle of emotional wreckage, trying to understand how everything changed so quickly. Your mind begins searching for an explanation that can make unbearable pain feel understandable. And that's where labels become incredibly tempting. Calling your ex a narcissist can feel like finding the missing piece. It organizes the chaos. It explains the cruelty. It gives your suffering a name. But sometimes, that name doesn't actually fit. This is where many people become trapped. When someone walks away from you, resentment naturally follows. You replay every conversation, every argument, every moment you ignored because you wanted the relationship to work. Looking backward, red flags suddenly seem obvious. Everything starts fitting into a story that makes the breakup easier to survive. If they were a narcissist, then none of this was your fault. If they were a narcissist, then their lack of empathy finally makes sense. If they were a narcissist, then maybe you don't have to face the possibility that they simply chose a different path. That story feels comforting. But comfort and truth aren't always the same thing. Then comes another painful reality. Closure. Or more accurately, the lack of it. Most relationships don't end with satisfying explanations. People rarely sit down and honestly explain every fear, disappointment, or change of heart. Sometimes they disappear. Sometimes they become distant. Sometimes they offer vague excuses that answer nothing. And your mind hates unfinished stories. So it begins writing one. This is where it traps you. Narcissist becomes the explanation that fills every unanswered question. Every confusing memory suddenly points in the same direction. The story feels complete. But feeling complete doesn't always mean it's accurate. There's another reason this happens. Your brain struggles to understand how someone who once said, "I love you," can eventually leave. That contradiction feels impossible to process. So you search for something bigger than ordinary human behavior. Something that explains how love could disappear. Narcissism becomes that explanation. But sometimes, people don't stop loving because they're disordered. Sometimes feelings genuinely change. Sometimes priorities shift. Sometimes people make painful decisions because they're choosing themselves. That doesn't automatically make them narcissists. It makes them human. Even when their choices devastate someone else. Read that again. This is also where many people confuse selfishness with narcissism. There is a difference. A selfish person may prioritize their own happiness. They may avoid difficult conversations. They may leave in ways that feel cold or unfair. Those behaviors can cause enormous pain. But clinical narcissism involves persistent patterns of grandiosity, entitlement, exploitation, lack of empathy, and an overwhelming need for admiration across many areas of life. Not every emotionally immature person fits that pattern. Not every inconsiderate partner is a narcissist. Sometimes there's simply someone who handled the relationship badly. That distinction matters. Because inaccurate labels can keep you focused on diagnosing them, instead of healing yourself. Perhaps the hardest truth of all is this. Sometimes calling your ex a narcissist allows you to stay emotionally connected to them. As long as you're studying them, researching them, trying to prove what they are, they're still occupying space in your mind. The relationship hasn't truly ended. It's simply changed forms. The label becomes another thread keeping you tied to someone who's already gone. And that's a prison disguised as understanding. None of this means your pain isn't real. It doesn't mean you weren't mistreated. It doesn't mean your experience should be minimized. If someone manipulated you, lied to you, controlled you, or emotionally abused you, those actions matter. Whether they carry a clinical diagnosis or not. Your healing doesn't depend on proving what they are. It depends on understanding what happened to you. Because in the end, the most important question isn't whether your ex was a narcissist. The most important question is whether the relationship repeatedly cost you your peace, your confidence, and your sense of self. If it did, you already know everything you truly need to know. The moment you stop chasing the perfect explanation is often the same moment you finally begin walking away from the person who no longer gets to define your story.